where I come from, right, in our background, but I think this summit is testimony to the ways that we embrace all of those eccentricities, as Niic was saying. So thank you so much, Valdez, for sharing. So we are now going to switch gears into our New American Youth in Leadership Dialogues on the Movement panel. So I want to call up our panelists, our co-moderators to come up here. We have a very exciting group of speakers for this panel. First on our panel will be Craig Valdez from New American Leaders. Then Niic from Dream Summer Fellow, the director of the Dream Resource Center, and Katia Garcia, a youth organizer from Cuba. So I'd like to invite you all to come up here and for y'all to give them a big round of applause. Thank you, everyone. Welcome. So for today's panel, I want to give a little bit of grounding and context into this space. This panel, the bringing of these speakers into this panel is actually really exciting because we are all youth organizers, and so we want to take the time to elevate all the work that they've been doing, all of the eccentricities of being a youth organizer. It is not all roses and peachy cream, right? There's also very difficult moments when it comes to youth organizing, and we want to uplift that and share those stories here today. I want to also introduce my co-moderator today, Gabriela.
I'm here with the organization Niic, which is centered around the Los Angeles area. I'm 17 years old, and the immigrant cause is very important to me for the rest of my family, and history behind it.
Right, thank you, Gabriela, and welcome to our moderators, to our speakers. Sorry, I'm the moderator. We will go ahead and get started with our first question. So, actually, just giving you all space to introduce yourselves. So, my question is, who are you? Where do you come from? And why are you passionate about this work? So I'll give you each a minute to respond. Starting with Anthony.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Anthony Nam. I'm the director of the Dream Resource Center, which is a project of the UC Labor Center. I'm originally from the Philippines. And I started youth organizing in 2012, actually, when DACA had passed. I'm sorry. I'm undocumented, so my family came to the United States in the early 2000s and really not realizing what it meant to be undocumented in the United States and the struggles of figuring out how to get higher education and figuring out what my career path would be after college. So when I was in college, we didn't have the California Dream Act, which provided opportunities to undocumented youth, and we didn't have DACA. So I think a lot of that was really because of the organizing of undocumented people in California and throughout this country.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Craig Valdez. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am the regional program manager for a national nonpartisan nonprofit organization called New American Leaders. And we train immigrants and refugees or anyone who identifies closely with the immigrant experience to run for office essentially. But outside of all of that, I identify as a proud son of 2 Filipino immigrants. And the reason why I'm here today and the reason why I am a huge advocate of youth is because throughout my leadership journey, the biggest saying, or the saying that was said the most often was, young people are the future. Oh my gosh, you're so young, you're the future. But they neglect the fact that the future is here and the future is now, right? Like young people deserve to be in these spaces. You deserve to have a voice in the process. And then, so I'm a huge advocate of youth, right? Like you all being here is an important part of your journey, but it also means that there is so much more to look forward to, and there is so much more that you can own and achieve and reward yourself for, because that saying is just something that doesn't mean a lot anymore, right? Like it's about empowering yourself and empowering other people. And so that's why I'm very excited to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Katia Garcia. I'm a youth organizer with Chirla. So I currently live in Los Angeles. I'm from East LA, so we're in East LA. So I'm undocumented. My family and I came here when I was 11 years old. I'm not gonna tell you my age because that's giving myself away. But the reason why I'm passionate about this work is one, undocumented, but my whole family is undocumented as well. My parents, my sister. I am privileged because I was able to qualify for DACA. However, I understand that that is not the solution, right? Because a lot of the youth that I work with have not been able to apply for DACA. And so this is why I'm still in this work, because we need to get something permanent for our immigrant community. And yeah, I mean, just for myself and for my family and for my students, because they really like motivate me to keep going.
Thank you all for this introductions. Just a quick note, this panel is actually being live streamed on Facebook on our social media. So welcome to all that are viewing via the internet. We want to give a little bit of context into this work. So before we get into the first question, I think one thing to know, right, is that organizing spaces for youth, as all of you have mentioned, can be a very difficult space to be in. So we're excited to have these very honest conversations with our panelists and hear from them what organizing has been like for them, right? And they're all in very different parts of their careers, they're all different ages, and so we're very excited to have them be a part of this conversation with us.
There's so much to learn from our conversations and from our panelists. We want to start off by asking, what was the time you felt you stepped into a leadership role?
I can go first. Yeah, so I've been doing organizing in the immigrant community for about a decade now. So I think really the first time I got to step up was when I was doing my fellowship 12 years ago. So actually the program that I run is a national culture program for undocumented young people. It's the first kind of its own. It was made for and by undocumented students and really to provide folks a pathway to do social justice work. So I remember when I was in my fellowship, I was tasked with informing our communities of the DACA program. This is when the president just announced it. We were making sure the communities knew what's happening. I've never done a community forum at this scale where I had to organize a multi-language translation and outreach to different communities. And I was super scared of what was going to happen because I'd never done this before. I had some organizing background in college, but it was so different when you're stepping in from university to our community. The dynamics are so different, right? There's already key players that are there, and how do you leverage those partnerships of organizations that you're with or your personal relationships? So I think just even stepping into that leadership role, right? Like that, this is my project, that I am the one leading it. So whatever happens really is because of my hard work and collaboration with other folks. So I think really allowing yourself to learn, and it's okay to fail when you're doing something new, right? It's not the end of the world, and I think that's something I learned when things didn't go right during my panel. Like the mic wasn't working, people weren't coming in on time, and I knew that it was okay, and then that whatever I did for that particular project was going to be beautiful. It was super successful. We had over 100 folks attend. Many families learned about the DACA program, what it was about, how much it cost for ticket services, and I felt really proud after that moment. And really knowing that it was the first of its kind in our community in Los Angeles, where it's a multi-language forum specifically targeting Asian American immigrants.
And I can go next. So I remember clearly the first time that I felt like I really took a leadership role, and it was also scary because we did a sit-in. I was a senior in high school. At that time, in my high school, it was a public school in Los Angeles. LAUSD was laying off a lot of teachers, so they were giving pink slips. And if you know the Los Angeles area, the classrooms were already really crowded. We had one teacher for these students. And so I remember my senior year, that's when I started joining different clubs. And I joined that club that was for United students. And so in that club, we actually organized ourselves. So I was a participant there, right? Like there were other students that have been there longer, that organized the whole thing. And so we organized a sitting because we wanted to show that as students, we didn't want more teachers to be laid off, right? We didn't want more of our programs to be cut out in the high school. And so I remember how I just about, I forgot the period, but I got a text message that basically was the kind of like the green light, right? Okay, it's time. You need to go to the courtyard. And it was beautiful because you could see like a bunch of students just sitting in the courtyard. We didn't go to class that day, but it was really scary. Like I was sweating. I was like, oh my God, like, am I gonna get in trouble? Am I gonna get suspended? But I think like what I really got from this was that sometimes you do have to take those kind of actions, right? Because talking, sharing your story is super important, but there comes a time when you do have to, step out of your comfort zone and really, go take certain measures, right? That really push, positions of power to do what's right for you and for your community. So that's for me.
I really like what you just said in terms of stepping out of your comfort zone. I mean, when I think about what my when you first step into your leadership role, like it really begs the question, what does being a leader look like, right? Like what does that experience, how do you define leadership? And so the way that I've sort of seen my quote unquote leadership role is both professionally and personally. I mean, when I was a kid, right, my parents didn't speak English very much. So I would either translate for them, or we would eat at a restaurant, be like, can you ask me for the boxes? And I would feel comfortable asking them for them. And I was nervous too. I was like, why do I have to do that? I'm not an adult. So like I'd have to go up there and ask, yo, can I get a box for my parents? Because we gotta take leftovers home. Or the time my mom studied for her citizenship test, and I was there helping her study for that. I mean, I think personally that was like a moment in my life where I felt like I was defining leadership in a way where I was advocating for people who didn't have resources to do so. And so I would always, I thought at that time, or like when I was advocating for my parents, or I would do things for my parents who otherwise didn't feel like they could survive in this country. Personally, I felt like that was a leadership position that I was in. Professionally, when I was in college, I did an internship program. Like all my parents who were in school were either there for nursing or engineering. When I told my parents I wanted to be in poli-sci, they were like, why, right? And so, I was telling Anthony this earlier, but like I was neither good at math or science, so I couldn't be a doctor or an engineer. But something I was really good at was talking back to my parents, and they were like, well, maybe you should be a lawyer instead. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll do that. And at the time, like I took on an internship. I interned for a local congressional member here in Nevada. I'm from Las Vegas, so welcome to my town. And at that time, I was nervous, right? Because I was like, I don't get to see a lot of Filipino or Asian American people in my role in like government work. And so at the time, I was both the youngest person on the staff and the only Asian American person on staff. As an intern, right? And so I saw myself, there was a lot of moments where I was like, I don't feel like I belong, but to your point, like stepping out of your comfort zone is a moment where you realize that you are part of your leadership journey. And so being able to share resources with the community as a young person, as an Asian American person, was one of the very first times I felt like I was in that moment.
Thank you all. I resonate wholeheartedly with everything that was just said, and I think one thing to note too is about these like skills that we define or that we think about as professional, right? A lot of times we grow up and we do all of these things for our parents, and we don't think of them as tangible skills that can help us later on, but they are. We have been developing medical translation skills since age 6, right? We've been doing all of these things for such a long time, and so I'm really glad that they named this, right? Because it is important to know that we've been doing a lot of these things for a long time. And to own all of those skills, right? I think going back to power and just embracing all of the power that you all hold. I think something similar when we talk about power is the discomfort that we feel when we step into those positions. I know I definitely, I started organizing very young and in very professional spaces with legislators and representatives from my home state. And I was a child, I was 11. And so for me, I think that imposter syndrome hit me very early on, but I didn't know that's what it was. I just knew that I felt very uncomfortable. I felt like I didn't deserve to be there. I felt like the work that I had done was handed to me, even though it obviously was not. That work we put in, we dedicate the time, the energy. So I think one question that I want to ask y'all is around imposter syndrome and how, if you felt that stepping into leadership spaces, and then how you navigate those feelings and surpassing that.
I can go. I think, Melissa, when you said that question, I think for me, imposter syndrome started when I graduated high school. Like it felt a lot. And it felt a lot because at that time, it was 2010, and there wasn't the California Dream Act, so there wasn't financial aid for undocumented students. So that's where kind of like the first, I would say, slap in the face came, right? Where like I couldn't go to the school that I wanted to, UCLA, even though I had gotten accepted there, right? And so for me, that moment was really what shaped the whole myself, right? Because I realized that my whole journey in university, I was gonna feel like I didn't deserve to be there. Not only was it an internal feeling, but the systems of education were telling me that I didn't deserve to be there, right? And so for me, that was a really tough kind of moment because I had no help. I didn't have any counselor that could, empower me, or even just like an amazing space like all of you right here to let me know that I could do it. And so it was a lot of like internal work. My first year of college, I went through depression and just a lot of internal anger. But then I found an undocumented student club at a community college where I went. And oh my God, like that's where everything changed. And I'm like, are you telling me I can go to like college? Well, I'm gonna show you, right? So I turned all of those feelings of anger and depression into motivation to do something about it. And so the more they would tell me you can do something, then I would tell them, oh, do you want to see that I can do something, right? And so I think for me, it's been a journey. I now work with Chila, which, it feels like a home to me. But there are still certain moments where I do feel like, oh my God, I doubt myself, right? Like, can I do this? Like, should I be there? Like, taking the next big step in my career. And so I'm going through that right now, just to let you know. But I'm also like just talking to myself about like, hey, I deserve to take the next step. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, remember your name again, Kathy? That really resonated with me in terms of just experiencing imposter syndrome, and I feel like it happens in every person's lives in different stages, right? Like when I was in school, feeling like I wasn't good enough in terms of getting to college and being undocumented and feeling like I don't deserve the aids that I was able to get for my own hard work, right? And for me, realizing in the last 10 years, a lot of that feeling of not being enough is really imposed by white supremacy of like, as people of color, right, we're never enough in this country, whether we're immigrants that worked hard during this pandemic to make sure this country was running. We're not enough to get citizenship, right? And I think it's the systems in place need to be changed to one affirm people's humanity, even our own culture, right? To share our appreciation for each other's wisdom and belonging, right? Like the fact that you exist in the world, that's enough contribution, right? Because you're a very good person and no one else will take your place in this world, and your contribution to this moment and this world will be uncompared, right? And just to really embody that you are enough, that when someone tells you you're not doing a good job, and it's part of life as you learn. I failed so many times and felt like I wasn't supposed to be where I was supposed to be. But really, after you get through those hurdles, whether it's academics, whether it's your job or your internship, I think once you get over the difficult parts, right, you realize that you can do anything that you put your mind to, right? And it's really about you putting yourself in the best position possible, whether it's asking for help when you need to. I think that's the one thing I struggled so much when I was younger, was like I felt like I needed to be perfect, and no one's perfect, Like, you're gonna make mistakes. You're not gonna know what to do the first time you do an organizing activity or the first time you plan an event. And it's okay to ask for help. Like, we're all here together trying to build a better future for all of us. And all we need to do is to have each other's back and to know that when you have questions, when you need help, just reach out to your colleague, your friends, and they're going to be there to support you.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to define what imposter syndrome is, right? It's like that moment of self-doubt, no matter your accomplishments or no matter your education. And when I think about, or when I think about how imposter syndrome shows up in my life or the people around me, I mean, it's a very common thing. Like, you feel it very often, and and you're not the only person who feels like that, right? It's something that's prevalent in each and every one of our lives. When you think about a time where you felt nervous or you felt like you weren't confident enough to do something, like, that is a form of imposter syndrome, right? And so people who don't identify as imposters or people who don't feel like they are imposters, you sort of have to realize that they are no more capable or intelligent than you, right? They are, the only difference between you and them is that they think differently. And so there's a TED Talk by Valerie Young in 2017. She talks about imposter syndrome, but she also mentions that in order to feel like, or in order to stop feeling like an imposter, you have to stop thinking like an imposter, right? You have to think differently. So when you walk into this space feeling like an imposter, you're not just going to magically walk out of this space not feeling like it. It's just, it's a habit that you have to sort of break in order for you to stop feeling like it. And so I'll give you an example, right? Like, during COVID, like, I didn't go to the gym at all, right? Like, I was eating pretty crappy, and like, I was not at all like in shape. And so the first time back at the gym, right, like, I had major imposter syndrome, right? And I'm like, I'm not healthy, I'm not in good shape, like, comparing myself to other people, right? And then you think to yourself, like, you look at the weights that you're lifting, and you're like, can you lift this weight, right? And like, this self-doubt of like, I can't do this, I should be grateful that I am able-bodied to do this. And then, it's a mind over matter connection that you can overcome a physical circumstance just by thinking about it. And so when you think about, like, you're always like, I can't lift this way, or I can't achieve this, but you give it a shot and you fail, that's okay, right? Like, that is a remedy to imposter syndrome, is giving yourself grace, rewarding yourself, and being patient with yourself. Because folks who don't feel imposter syndrome, they fail too, right? Like, everyone fails in life. It's a matter of how you get back and how you bring yourself back from those moments that define your journey. And so if you fail, that's okay. And if you succeed, that's even better, because you know that you can take the next step forward. And so it all starts with thinking differently. Like, showing up in these spaces and knowing that you are enough, that you are qualified, and that you can do it and be better in whatever situation that you are in. And it's your journey alone, right? It's not something that everyone else has to take on with you, but it's something that you can work on like, by yourself and with each other.
I really like what Nicole said about trying and failing. I think that's a universal experience, and I think having these conversations and hearing about other experiences on imposter syndrome really helps us learn from it and try our best to overcome it. We also wanted to ask, what enabled you to step into leadership, and who helped you along the way, and how did you help you along the way?
Yeah. I think what really enabled me to step into leadership was knowing that there wasn't anyone else who looked like me in leadership in the places that I was in, right? And so I was involved in student government at UNLV. But I was specifically involved in student government for students who lived in the residence halls or the dorms, right? And those folks who live on campus face a different level of obstacles because you live and learn in the same community. And so when I was living on campus, like, we didn't have sustainable water bottles, or like, we didn't have like sustainability measures, like removing plastic water bottles and having hydration stations set up. We didn't have gender neutral bathrooms, and we didn't have like living and learning communities where like racism and xenophobia does exist in the residence halls too, right? So providing safe spaces for students who who identified differently was something that was important to our campus. And so what enabled me to really get into leadership is knowing that no one else in my community was stepping up to do it. And so I had to take a moment for myself and think, like, is this something that I can do? And I, at the time did not feel confident to do it. But there was folks in the community, folks who lived on campus, people who had been in the movement for a little while, who had seen that, like, they had tried and failed, who have told me, right, like, you can do this. And so I had to seek refuge. I had to seek mentorship from people that I didn't exactly know very well, but had a lot of faith that I could do it. And my mentor now, his name is Orlando White. He actually worked at UNLV. He had done, residential life and student development for a while. Now works at USC. But he, him telling me that, like, hey, you can do this, and it's okay for you to advocate for these things. It's okay for you to fail if you don't do well in it. Like, it's okay for you to do these things. I'm here to help you. I'm here to guide you. I'm here to support you. Was helpful, but also being surrounded by people who, like, I'm so glad that you stepped up to do this, or meeting someone who was like, I was too afraid to mentor anyone because I didn't really know if they wanted to do it. But now that you've shown how excited you are, your enthusiasm for this work is important. Then I'm glad that we can work on this together. And so finding like-minded individuals comes as a result of mentorship. Throughout the process, it brings people together. And think about the people you're sitting with, right? Like, are you mentored by the same people, or do you know the same people? There's a commonality there that really propels you into leadership.
For me, I think, what motivated me to just, to keep going and to be in this movement. It's obviously I had no option, right? I'm undocumented. So I felt like, okay, I either have the option of just sitting down, waiting for things to magically happen, opportunities to magically happen, or, do something about it. And so for me, I made the decision that I wasn't gonna be sitting down on the sidelines, right? That I needed to be right there with my community, fighting for what I needed to be able to graduate college, to be able to get, citizenship and just overall liberation for everybody, right? And so that's what made me, keep going, and what makes me keep going each day, right? Because we're still far from getting that citizenship. But, by pushing, I think we can get there. And I would say that who was there for me was Chirla. I mentioned that it is a home for me, and I mean it, I met all my friends there. I still stay connected with them. My mentor, Pedro Trujillo, actually, he taught me a lot. He taught me how to organize, but he provided me also with that unconditional support, and even just tips on how to navigate, right, as an undocumented person. Like, hey, how do you do this, right? Like, how do you do that? And I think those are really important things. And like I mentioned here, my colleagues too, is you need to find a community that's gonna support you. That's super important. You need to find that one person, that you feel comfortable asking questions, and just simply like teaching you how to navigate things that we don't get taught in school, right? They don't tell us how to do taxes when you're undocumented. They don't tell us, how to hustle 101, right? We don't have a social security number. And so that's why we need to help each other out with all of those things. So yeah.
Repeat the question again.
Yeah, the question was, what enabled you to step into leadership spaces, and then who helped you along the way?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is what my two co-panelists had said, right? What is believing in yourself that you're able to do whatever the task is, whatever the role is, and to know that you're not doing it by yourself, and that you're part of a movement lineage, right? I think for me, I always go back to all the learnings of organizers that I never met in my life because they passed away. For example, in the immigrant movement, we always pay tribute to Tan Tran and Tina Felix, who are two key leaders. Were the first people to say undocumented immigrant nationally, and really knowing that their work allowed my work to happen today, and how to really allow that growth to continue for younger folks. So, In 2012, there weren't a lot of undocumented API folks out about their status. I was one of the few folks and felt the need to create a space for that and to uplift the leadership of other people in my community because we weren't always thought of as leaders, right? Because there's this model minority that Asian Americans are quiet, right? We're not like, we don't care about issues. When we do, it impacts us in every single day and to be able to leverage the real realities and struggles of our communities and to be able to do that together. I think organizing is such a powerful thing. Anything that you experience today as a benefit, that's because of people that organize with their colleagues, whether it's DACA, right? That was because of the brilliance of undocumented young people, whether it's the in-state tuition bills in your respective states, that's because of the organizing of undocumented young people, whether it's the political moment we're in right now on immigration, that's because of the organizing of our communities for the last 20 decades. So you know that you come from a powerful community, that you are powerful, that you're able to make that change, and that mentorship is so key, both from kind of reciprocal ways, right? As young people, you mentor us who are older because you are brilliant, you are innovative. I always feel heat in my feet when I'm with younger folks because they maybe remember, right, that like we need to always envision for the biggest change in our communities often when you do this work, it can get tiring and you can get jaded and just fall into the status quo, right? Or like accept whatever comes outside pressures or anything else. Really, you need to fight for what's needed, and that's because of folks who have mentored me, whether it's my mentor Betty Han, who's a movement lawyer, amazing movement lawyer, who gave me my first job doing organizing work and made sure that I got paid as an undocumented person. Made sure that my labor wasn't free, that all the hard work that I put in was being compensated for, and know that people are out there supporting you, that there are folks out there that are willing to help you out, to support you, to help you grow and challenge you and support you at the same time.
Thank you all so much. I think let's just take a moment to celebrate all the responses that we got, all the shared experiences from our panelists. Raise your hand if you resonated with anything that was said on the panel. Almost everyone, okay? So again, this goes back to our collective shared experiences, right, that are so important to elevate and to have these conversations, right? So I hope we all continue to have conversations about what it's like to be young and an organizer. You are not alone. You have a room full of fellows, of fellow NILAC friends, a family to support you in these spaces. So I just want to extend major gratitude to our panelists for speaking today. We are so excited to have you here and just want to thank you all again. So can we get a big round of applause for our panelists?
So next on our agenda, we'll be moving into breakout spaces in this room. These breakouts will each be led by NILAC coordinators and feature two topics: higher education and career preparation. On one side, there will be two higher education groups with Katya and Eva. And on the other side of the room will be Caesar and Habakkuk, leading the career pathways breakout group. Again, Katya and Eva are facilitating the breakout rooms for higher education. Please move to the board, or Katya and Eva, if you would like to discuss goals around higher education.